So I think a question that every cinematographer or aspiring cinematographer, filmmaker asks themselves is, how can I make my image more cinematic? How can I achieve a quote-unquote cinematic image? I really think that when you think about what a cinematic image is, what we're really doing is trying to give the impression of something that's grounded and real life, but at the same time uses artistic techniques to somewhat exaggerate that reality. And I think that's a good way to think about how cinematic lighting should be. Essentially what we're trying to do with each image is look at where we think the light should be coming from and exaggerate it and utilize it to advantage to create a contrasty and thus for a cinematic image. So today I want to show you a few scenes that I shot and the very simple technique that I used to make the image look quote-unquote cinematic. Essentially there are two things that I use and not always both together. The first thing is soft overhead lighting. I really don't think that a cinematic image gets more simpler than that. If you think about how we as people look, generally, whether we're inside or outside, light is generally coming from above us. So when it comes to trying to produce a visually interesting image, I think that's the same rule we need to follow. And the easiest way to do that is by trying to get soft overhead cinematic lighting. Now I achieved this using a very simple tool. I have an LED matte light, which is the Falcon Eyes RX24 TDX. If you've been on my channel before, you've seen me rave about this light. I love this light. It's very transportable, and the best thing is because it's a light matte, it's very easy to rig in such a way where you can have it overhead above a subject. So essentially all I do is get this very soft light, put it on a C-stand and put it above the subject. And really, sometimes that's all I actually need in order to create that cinematic image. There is something about soft overhead lighting which just looks beautiful. It looks very natural, but at the same time it's very easy to maintain, especially when it comes to the size of this particular LED matte light. Because you're focusing on people and subjects, the size of the light is very focused on the subject themselves, which means that the rest of the room is not completely lit, which allows you to control the lighting of each image. The second thing I do, which is also very simple, is find the nearest window and shoot a light through it into the room. Whether we are dealing with a daylight scene or a nighttime scene, we usually expect light to come in through the curtain. As you can see right behind me, there's light coming through the curtain, and what we want to try and do is replicate that as best we can in such a way where we have continuous light shining through the curtain. And I believe that also gives us a very cinematic image. And when we arrange the blocking of our scene, all we need to do is get the subject and ensure that he's standing in front of the window or the window is somewhat behind him, and you're shooting into the light, essentially. I really believe that with those two techniques, one being shooting light through the window and a curtain, making that light also soft, and also having soft overhead lighting, I really believe just working with those two philosophies can make any image you create look really special. I'm going to show you now two scenes where I use this. As you can see over here, there is a soft overhead light on the subject's face, and it just gives that nice spill over his shoulders onto his face as well, but at the same time, you know, it hasn't spilled across the room. I have a Amaran 200D shining through the window, through the curtain, which is trying to imitate moonlight, which might be a bit bright, but at the same time it gives a beautiful spill to the rest of the room, which makes it feel like the room is being lit by that moonlight, and it makes it feel like he himself is being lit by an overhead light in his room. And as you can see, automatically is what we've done now is create all this contrast all over his face and across his body, and there's a lot of contrast in the room, and that contrast has given us the kind of depth to the image that we want, which ultimately creates what we call a cinematic image. Every image that we create, we're just trying to take a 2D image and make it seem as much like a 3D image as possible. When we watch TV or cinema or anything else, we are looking at a 2D image, we're looking at a screen. So it's our job as cinematographers, as filmmakers, to try and utilize the artistry that we have to make the image seem as 3D as possible. And you can do that by utilizing light in order to create contrast in the image and depth to the image. The more contrasted an image is, the more depth there is to the image, especially when it comes to subjects and faces, and therefore it seems more like a 3D image, even though you're actually looking at a 2D image. And when you do this in such a way where all the light seems motivated, it looks like it's real lighting coming from a real place. Even if it is exaggerated, the subconscious mind accepts where the light is coming from, and that is good enough to make a beautiful image. The second scene I want to show you is one that I filmed of a family watching TV, and in this image there is actually no light coming in through the window. I decided not to shine any light through the window. There is just simply one LED light on a C-stand, which is the Falcon Eyes that I have above their heads. And you can see, just because the width of the light is quite small, you can see how it spills across their faces. It looks beautiful. It creates shadows across their faces. I left the light behind them on, but turned off the light in the living room. And that gives you a nice contrast in the image as well, in that the living room itself is lit by this one light, but behind them they have this orange light of the kitchen. And again, you can see this looks very cinematic, and the reason it looks cinematic is because the spill of the light and the softness of the light has just added some contrast to their face, and it really is as simple as that. Obviously it's also about the framing, the camera, the lens, but I really don't think we can underestimate how good soft overhead lighting looks in any image. So yeah, I really hope that was helpful to you. And just a quick caveat, I do not consider myself to be an expert. I am a student, still learning and trying to make my images look as good as possible. But hopefully in trying to utilize this technique, we can together improve our images. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you soon. Bye.